something on your mind anytime. I'm here to listen, Sistah Talk. When you need someone who understands, I know what you're missing, Sistah Talk. No matter what you're going through, don't worry, I ain't going nowhere. Sistah Talk. If you ever feel alone, say the word, I'll be right there. Sistah Talk. Sister, 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 Sistah Talk. Sister, 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 Sistah Talk. Sister, 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 Sistah Talk. Sister. Sistah Talk.
Hi, this is Sistah Talk TV show coming to you live from Midtown Manhattan. My name is Deetra Kelsey, your host. You know, with all the hoopla with the Whitney Houston's death and the Trayvon Martin murder, we seem to forget a silent disease that has been affecting our community for the past 15, maybe 20 years. We're talking about HIV/AIDS in our community, particularly amongst Black women. Today, our guest is Geraldine Joseph. She's a physician assistant and advocate HIV/AIDS specialist. She will talk about the statistics and why this is affecting our community so much. Sitting next to Geraldine Joseph is Ms. Michelle Lopez. Michelle Lopez is a physician assistant and treatment educator and advocate for HIV/AIDS. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, you know so much about it, that's why I said. Michelle Lopez was infected with the HIV virus while she was carrying her child, and she passed it on to your child, Raven. But 22 years later, now you all are a fierce team educating the community about HIV/AIDS. Yeah. You know, before we get into your story, I just want to clarify, what is HIV, Geraldine?
HIV is the immune deficiency virus. You can get HIV from unprotected sex. You find it in blood, you find it in semen, you find it in vaginal secretions. And in the African American community, we see higher rates of HIV in women. We also see higher rates of HIV in men that have sex with men.
Right.
And I've been working with patients for the last 15 years that have been living with HIV and AIDS.
So what's the difference between HIV and AIDS?
So when a person has AIDS, that means their T cells are, usually it can be less than 200, or they had an opportunistic infection, such as TB, tuberculosis. They may have something called PCP, or somebody could have...
PCP, what's that?
PCP is an infection that you can get. It affects your lungs. People can come in, they complain of shortness of breath. They have problems breathing. And we see this when people have T cells less than 100.
T cells, what's that?
T cells has to do with your immune system.
Okay.
So what happens with HIV...
Your T cells is protecting your body. That's what they call the immune system.
So what happens when you have HIV, the T cells are being affected. So a person that doesn't have HIV, their normal T cells can be anywhere from 500 to 1400. So when a person has HIV, the virus attacks the immune system. So you'll see a person's T cells drop. The
T cells drop, and that's the indication that you may have HIV or AIDS?
Yes. So if a person's T cells is 350, that is somebody that has HIV.
So what's
but if a person
normal?
has a T cells, normal is anywhere from 500 to 1400 without HIV.
Okay.
However, if your T cells are less than 200, that's something that would give you a diagnosis of AIDS.
Okay, thank you.
Or if you had tuberculosis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so those are the things that we look at when patients come in. We order blood work to see what their T cells are, to see where is their diagnosis. So there are people that had HIV that don't have AIDS.
Oh, okay. Ms. Lopez, you are a courageous soul. I want to thank both of you again for gracing Sistah Talk TV set. Let's start from the beginning, okay? I just want to start from the beginning. You are originally from Trinidad.
Yes.
You came to this country at 16 years old. Can we start from 16 on?
Wow. Whew. You know, at the age of 16, actually, my parents was having a lot of difficulty, what I would say even understanding what my behavior pattern was about. Living in Trinidad. I was a teenager acting out, very rebellious, kept getting into fights. I mean, I started dating a guy, you know, who was a leader of a gang in Trinidad. I can tell you, the girl was just acting out.
Why was that? Why do you think
today, the things that I know today, and I've learned about myself so much today, but I always tend to say there are still hundreds and hundreds of Michelle Lopez's that are still out there. Because at the age of 16, I was within the mental mode of just not liking myself. I hated myself. I was someone, I'm an incest survivor.
Okay.
I was sexually molested as a young kid from the age of 6 up until I was like 11 years old by my 3 godbrothers.
Your 3 godbrothers.
And this came about because of a family situation. My parents and they had separated for a period of time. In the Caribbean, family members come together and help one another. So my dad was, you know, at a period of time raising, you know, 6 children. So my godmother stepped in to give some support to help him with the 2 younger kids, which was myself and my younger brother. And I got molested during that period of time. I talk about it today because, you know what, I've learned and I've healed, and I'm still healing. I'm still.
So that was your way of just acting out,
so you didn't know. No idea. I mean, even though you know, when my parents got back together, I remember my dad taking me to a gynecologist as a little girl and being treated for STDs. I know now today these were STDs that I was being treated for. As a young girl, I had no idea. As a little child, you know, I had no idea I was being treated for sexually transmitted diseases.
So they weren't talking to you, right?
They were not talking to me. They were not talking to themselves. You know, they were dealing with their adult stuff. You know, I've brought closure to this with my parents. We've talked about this because, you know, there's generations of behaviors that continues. And when it finally dawned on me, when HIV, you know, came into my life, it affected my daughter. We will be talking about that, her being born with HIV. I said there is something that led me on this pathway. So I started looking at my behavior.
Okay, 16, you arrived in this country. What's that? What happened?
I arrived in the country. I was living with an aunt, you know, because my aunt was the primary person who my parent, you know, had, you know, sent me away with. Because one of the things I remember my mom saying, we can't deal with this behavior down here. I remember my mom using the words, you people can handle that in America. And, you know, it's like my mom, she did what she knew, you know. These are the behaviors, these are the cycles that goes on in our families.
Yeah, just not Trinidad.
Yeah,
it's here
just not
also.
Exactly.
So you got here, you still had the rebellious behavior when you got here.
Rebellious behavior, yes, indeed, because, you know, it was for me, I think it was, you know, we have a saying in, you know, in the Caribbean, you know, it's a saying, period, amongst people. You jump from the fire into the, you know, into the frying pan. I came into the belly of the beast. This is America. I'm an immigrant. I'm a young girl. You know, no one really there mentoring me. No one, again, still acknowledging this behavior is about a cry. She's crying out for something. She needs help. So
when you came here, did you get into any gangs or anything?
Didn't get into gangs, but sure enough, I found the street kids. Yes, indeed. I found them. You know, it's like a magnet.
Did you get into drugs or anything like that?
Yes, I did. I remember smoking pot. I remember sniffing cocaine. I remember popping pills. Because, you know, we tend to pacify our pain and our hurt.
Right.
You know, there's an author, a book that I read, oh my goodness, I just completed it, Terry Williams, talking about black pain. So much of us as black people is walking around in pain and we have not. And how our behavior, what we manifest is what's going on the inside, but we just don't know how to verbalize this.
So you got into the street kids, as you said.
Yeah.
So you got into a relationship.
Yep, I got into a relationship, but this relationship, it was a relationship where there was so many dreams and promises that was promised to me. I got into a relationship, you know, with this particular man.
Oh, he was much older than you?
No, he wasn't much older than me. He wasn't much older than me, but take it from this immigrant girl, he was an American citizen.
Okay.
So I saw a green card. I saw opportunities. Yes, these are some of the factors related. You know, it's like, you know, again, you know, opportunities like this, and this is why I tell it. You know, there's some people who say, oh my God, she got on television and she talked about all her personal business.
Do you think you could have gotten your green card without, but
listen,
you just didn't know?
I just had no idea that HIV was going to be a factor in my life. I just knew that, you know, got pregnant, you know,
so you
met
got
this
pregnant
man.
by this guy?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
fine.
indeed. You know, had a baby, and you know, down the road, I'm just seeing him marrying me, and me getting this green card, and me not having to worry about, you know, issues that a lot of us immigrants.
So this person is the father of Raven.
Yes.
Describe this
he
guy.
is.
So what turned you on
You know,
about
for
him?
me, I got to be honest. And again, you know, it's not about naming names or pointing
I'm not
fingers,
gonna
but
name names.
this is somebody who, you know, you met someone, you know, who shows you love, who shows you affection, who, you know, you feel as if you're in a safety net now.
Right.
You know, this person cares about me. This person has provided a home for me. You know, so you're looking at, you know, you're very grateful, and you're looking at, you know, the outcome. A child comes into the picture. I had no idea. This was back in 1990. I met
did you
this
know
person.
he was promiscuous?
I had no idea.
So
no,
he was very good at what he was
doing. We don't ever
doing.
look at someone and can say, well, this person is promiscuous.
But he was
this person is
heterosexual,
good.
correct?
Heterosexual man. Yes, indeed. Heterosexual man.
Fine as wine.
Fine as wine. Oh, my God. Ooh-wee. Fine.
Dropped it.
Okay,
Hello.
yes. Yes, indeed. And
Okay.
honey, you know, it's like, you know, here I am, this young girl again, living in Brooklyn. This man is from Harlem. You know, and I got caught up in all that, you know, all of the other things. But
the American
looking at-
dream. Yeah.
Yes, you know, but, you know, looking at what is my responsibility to myself.
So you got pregnant. You all broke up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
How did you
Yes, we
know
did.
that you were infected with HIV? When did you find out?
I found out that I was HIV positive because of I was living. My daughter was 9 months old as a newborn baby, and I was living in an apartment with a young man who was an active crack user. I was someone that was dealing with, you know, a lot of domestic violence situations, being beat up, being, oh my God, I think every bit of abuse you can think of.
So this guy
And
was on crack?
yes.
Were you smoking
when
crack
I found
too?
Out, no,
Okay.
never did. You know, and still today, do you notice my behavior? I still have this thing in me that, you know, crack wasn't a factor. The factor related to it, and I always tend to say, it's not the substances that gives us this disease. It's the behaviors that we engage in once we're under the influence of these different substances.
Okay.
So no, I was never a crack user, but I will tell you, at one point in time in my life, yeah, I used to sniff cocaine, but I just thought I was better than the crack users. Yes. You know, that's all these are some of the, you know, the myths and stuff that we go on, you know, that we go on with in society, so that we're not paying attention to ourselves.
Okay, so you left this guy, the father of
Left
Raven.
this guy because I was severely beaten one night.
By the father
beaten, not the father of my daughter, no.
But y'all just broke up.
Yeah,
Y'all just,
we broke up, and I'm with this guy,
And so
yes.
okay.
Beaten by this guy, and I just took my baby, wrapped her in a blanket, and just said, I can't take this anymore. It was one of the worst beating that I ever got from this man, but I'll say it today was the best because I left, and I never turned back. And here I am today. But, you know, it led me on a pathway where I started then all through the night riding the trains and just praying. I'm a person, I'm not a religious person. I'm very spiritual. I was raised, I believe in God. And prayers for me is what has always worked for me, is what has always helped me. And I kept switching the trains, and I ended up on a number 2 train, and there was an ad on this train into Brooklyn saying, if you're a woman who is dealing with domestic violence situation, if you're, you know, someone who's having a partner or you using drugs, if you're homeless, call this number. And I got off the train. I knew it was after 9 in the morning, and I got upstairs. I had a couple dollars on me, and I called. I remember that. I was standing right at the corner of Nevin Street and Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, and I called the number, and someone did answer.
Prayer works. I always say that. Prayer works.
It still works today.
It works today. So you got to the domestic shelter. You got yourself together.
Yeah. And it's through me being tested, because the facility that I walked into, when I got this number that I called from it's an organization, I work for that organization today, Community Healthcare Network. And this person that answered the phone, this organization is a federally qualified health center. They actually were doing a program for women who is uninsured, underinsured, if you're an immigrant, you know, getting you into healthcare. They're providing healthcare services. Remember, again, I'm an immigrant. I have no health insurance. I just had this baby. And based on when I called the facility and I told them what was going on with me, this is how my God works. I was standing 5 blocks away from where I was making this call to where this facility was.
Wow.
I walked to the facility. I told the counselor that was there. I actually saw a doctor that day, and I agreed to be tested because of the information I shared with them, letting them know
Did
my
you have
past history.
like a intuition, an inkling, something in there that
None
said,
whatsoever.
Really?
I had no inclination. No.
You were never sick.
But you just
No, I
you
was
just
never
wanted to
sick
be
before.
tested.
I just agreed to be tested because I told them of the situation I was living in, and they said, you know what, HIV today, and because of your daughter, I was telling them how sick this child has been. They said,
Oh, so
she
so
might be
actually,
showing
it was
symptoms.
your daughter was sick.
Yeah,
and they
she kept,
convinced
because
you.
she kept having all these ear infections, and as I told them, what was going on with me, and I had not seen a doctor after I had this baby because then I had no health insurance.
Right.
So they agreed. They asked me would I like to see a doctor that day. That same day, again, I would say it. I had to be treated for gonorrhea. I was walking around with gonorrhea, I had no idea, and I agreed to take an HIV test. During my pregnancy, I was never offered an HIV test during my pregnancy, and there was protocol in the state of New York.
So Raven was born in 1990.
She was born in 1990, yeah.
Which
now,
they should have
she was
tested.
she was tested, but she was tested blindly, where there was a needle stick, where they were sticking
So
babies
when you
under
say
the heels.
so Miss Joseph, when you said tested blindly, that means that they
The mom
didn't
was
tell
not
you.
aware.
Yeah, the
They didn't
mother
tell me.
wasn't aware.
I didn't sign to
So
give consent.
they knew that your baby was HIV,
Yes,
but they
babies
didn't
were
tell
being
you.
Sending home. Babies were being sent home with positive antibodies. So knowing we definitely knew the moms were pregnant.
Is that happening
we knew
now?
the pregnant moms
No.
were positive.
That doesn't
In
happen?
New York State,
No.
it's very different now. In New York
Yes.
State now, everybody that is pregnant is
pregnant woman
offered
offered.
HIV testing.
Okay.
And
Yes.
being at St. Luke's for the last 11 years, it's offered to everybody. Even if you come in late stage, meaning that if you show up in the ER to deliver a baby, it's still offered. So it is a state law that you get tested while you're pregnant.
When you found out,
But you
that
don't have to, but
Right.
it's...
You don't have. You
once
still
you
don't
You
have
can say,
to.
you can say no,
Say
but
no,
you're
but-
counseled. And to be
Yeah.
honest, when women are pregnant, almost everybody says
Everyone,
yes.
yeah.
Because,
Everybody says
you're
yes.
pregnant, you don't want any harm to be
Yes.
done to your child.
When you found out that you and your baby were positive, ooh, how was that? How did you feel about that?
Oh my! I felt when I found out the results, both of my daughter and myself being positive, I totally just went into this mode. I'm gonna die. These kids are gonna be taken away from me because I have two children. Raven has an older brother, but he's
Okay.
negative. They had two different dads.
Okay.
The first thing came to my mind: these two children, they're American citizens, are gonna be taken away from me, and I'm gonna be deported to Trinidad, and I'm gonna die of this virus.
Right. Okay.
That is not the case. That's not what happened.
So they helped you out.
Oh my gosh, this organization, I work for this organization today.
Yes,
It's been 19 years now since I've been there. I was placed into a domestic violence shelter. I got into care right away. Today, we are working on systems and how we can link someone directly into care as soon as they know that they're positive. This organization did this 22 years ago. That's what they did.
In your work, when you're lecturing through Harlem and you're lecturing or educating patients at North General in Harlem, is there still people who don't want to be tested? Is there a high percentage of people who don't want to be tested?
I think part of the problem with HIV and AIDS is we really need to get people to know about the importance of testing.
Okay.
Because people don't feel that HIV is going to happen to them. They always think it's somebody else. It's going to be somebody else's problem. But when I talk to people, especially when I talk to younger people, I say everybody has sex.
Right.
Everybody has sex. So if you have sex and you don't protect yourself, you put yourself at risk. Even if you protect yourself, if you have STDs, something like syphilis, if you have herpes, you have gonorrhea, if you have syphilis, you put yourself at risk for developing HIV because any form of STDs increases your chances of getting HIV.
Okay, let's get this straight now. How is HIV and AIDS transmitted?
So it's transmitted through blood. So somebody that might inject drugs, somebody that's snorting drugs, if you're sharing with somebody else, you can get HIV that way.
How about blood transfusions?
You can get it from a blood transfusion. However, today, the bloods are screened. So the likelihood of getting it from blood transfusion is rare.
Okay.
Now, prior to 1992, yes, you could have gotten it. But blood is screened. You can get it sexually because You can get it through the vaginal secretions.
How are they getting? I'm sorry.
That's how black women are becoming infected.
You get it from vaginal
heterosexual
secretions.
sex.
You can get it from
even anal
sex. Also, you find it in the semen. So this is why it's really important to protect yourself, because when you're having sex, the exchange of the bodily fluids, you can get HIV that way.
Let's go back. Let's go to the movie Precious. Remember when Monique said they asked her, you know, you need to get tested, and she said she wasn't going to get tested because she doesn't have sex in the behind, the butt, or something like that. Yeah. You can get HIV.
Heterosexual sex. Most black women. And I'm saying black because I see patients that are Caribbean, and just because you say African American, not everybody identifies as African American. She's from the Caribbean. She may not identify as African American.
Black people.
Black people. That's why I'm saying black women.
People, black women.
That's why I'm saying black women. So most black women, they get HIV heterosexually. Okay, that means they had sex with a man. That's how they get HIV. And this is why it's important to protect yourself. And it's also important for us to talk to young people, because young women, we do know they can be vulnerable because you have the lack of confidence. So you're not going to tell your boyfriend or your partner, use a condom. They don't know how to do partner.
Yeah, you know, but that's I want to ask both of you all that. That's not, you're right. But also, isn't it, that's why the reality is, it's hard to get a man to put on a condom, especially if you're in a supposedly in a committed relationship.
It's hard to get a man to put on a condom if we allow that to happen. This has to be part of our conversation. I am a woman. I've been in relationships with men who are negative, and they know my status. And we talk about the condom use, and we talk about, I mean, I still have guys today telling me, well, my God, if HIV, I said, honey, please, I even have an AIDS diagnosis. Yes, really? This is the face of AIDS today. Yes, indeed. I'm not saying this is going to be the average for everybody. Girly, yes, I am. I'm a voluptuous black woman. Yes, indeed. I'm 45. I'm proud of it. But I want you to know, part of, you getting to know me and I'm getting to know you, I'm going to let you know I'm HIV positive. It's not what defines me.
Okay, let's get the myths out the way of HIV. You can't get HIV by
hugging, kissing, no.
Drinking out of the same cup.
Sharing food.
Yeah.
How about the insect bites?
We talked about that. You don't get HIV from mixing that. When you talk about the mosquitoes, that's malaria.
You don't get HIV from sitting on a toilet bowl after someone who's HIV positive. Who's telling you? Did I walk in the bathroom and the sign said, I'm HIV positive? You know what I'm saying? So when I get off of this toilet bowl, you got to worry about sitting. No. Why? We have to stop this stigma that we keep perpetrating in our black community.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to go back to is we really need to empower women to know how to negotiate in the bedroom.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why are black women especially vulnerable to HIV/AIDS? Why are we? Like I said this earlier, 1 out of 4 women, newly cases, have the HIV/AIDS virus. Yeah. And 2 or 3 of them out of that are black women. What's going on with that?
Every 9 minutes, I keep saying this, every 9 minutes, someone is becoming infected. We've been sitting here for like the last 15 minutes, okay? Every 9 minutes, someone becomes infected with HIV. Out of that someone that becomes infected with HIV, there's a percentage in there that's a black woman.
You know something? This is what I forgot to do. We're live, and I want you to call in at 212-757-1393. We got some beautiful women here that can answer all your questions about HIV/AIDS. If you suspect if you have AIDS or HIV, or you are in a committed relationship with someone that you suspect, please call in at 212-757-1393. No shame, please.
But one of the things that you brought up is when we look at black women, HIV and AIDS disproportionately affects poor people. I'm not saying people that are middle class and rich don't get HIV and AIDS. That's not what I'm saying. Disproportionately affects people that are poor. So we really need to get into these communities to educate the lack of testing. We got to get people tested, because when you look at HIV and AIDS, depending what studies you look at, anywhere from 20 to 25% of people don't know they have the virus. So if they don't know they have the virus, we already know some people aren't protecting themselves. So some of these people are people that are affecting their community.
Yeah.
So we really need to get those people tested so they can find out that they have HIV and AIDS.
I truly believe it's people who don't know their HIV status is why we are still seeing the virus being spread.
Here in
People
our
who know,
community.
yes, people who know their status, you really do get into, you know, this mindset. You're working with providers. Again, if I keep it just to the New York State, we do have a system set up where your providers and you have the discussion about HIV. I mean, you know what your rights are. You know, there's an infrastructure that is out there. Unless you're part, again, of that infrastructure, the don't know is what a lot of people are basing, you know, not even wanting to know their status. I've met people who recently said to me, I don't need to know. What do I need to know my status for? If I know my status, I might be susceptible of someone being charged. Okay. There's a criminalization that's going on now in many states.
I know. I heard about that.
And that's another factor on why we're seeing a lot of
black men
don't want to be tested.
Okay.
We need
because of that.
We need to talk about that.
Okay, but before we get into that, I want to say why are we so vulnerable? Why isn't it a discussion in our community, as particularly amongst women, particularly amongst us?
It's taboo.
We like to talk. We get together.
We don't talk about sex.
We don't talk about sex.
To talk about HIV and AIDS, you have to be comfortable to talk about sex.
We don't talk about sex.
I've been.
Some of us
do a show like that.
Some of us do.
No, but in general. In general.
We don't want to throw in HIV in the mix because it takes a different trend of the conversation then. It takes a different trend of the conversation. But let me tell you something. I have sexual conversations with my girlfriends. I have sexual conversation with my nieces as a woman living with HIV, and I tell them how much fun I have. Yes, I do, because you know what? I let them know this. Again, it is part of a life. Sex is part of our life, and guess what? You want to have sex with me, you're going to know exactly, yes, indeed, HIV is a factor. So there's some things that we need to do. We use condoms. I teach men how I can put on a condom with my mouth. I let men see, okay, there are things that we can do. Absolutely, yes. Because I'm going to keep the thrill in this. That's what goes on with us.
Have fun.
But in general, the African-American community does not talk about sex. It's not something that's brought up in the home. So if you have a young daughter that's about 13 and 14, and they're going to become sexually active in a couple of years, or they may be sexually active already, you really need to teach your daughters and your sons about condoms, the importance, about really protecting themselves. And we don't find that African Americans really talk to their kids about sex. Everybody's fearful. If you talk about sex, we're going to make them have sex. Talking about sex does not make
Well, I have to admit, I have nieces and nephews, and I remember taking my 12-year-old niece to see The Color Purple, and she was talking about, oh, I thought she was gay. She's with a man now. And I was like, huh?
And they know.
I couldn't.
Once you open them up, once you open them up to these discussions, they're going to ask questions.
Because we're not comfortable.
I'm not comfortable.
And that's the advantage. Working in an HIV, I have no problem talking about sex. I don't, because it's been something I've been doing for years. But you get a lot of primary care providers that don't do HIV. Their patients come in, it's a routine thing done. They don't even say, you should get tested for HIV. I mean, one of the things we have to see when we're looking at people over 50, they're having sex. There's Viagra.
They sure are.
And they're having younger women.
And they're having women their age, too, and older. You know, let's not rule that out.
I remember I had a patient come to me, I think maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. She was in her late 60s when she found out she had HIV.
Whoa.
This lady, for years, was having pulmonary disease and wasn't getting better at all. And finally, after about 2 years, they said to her, maybe you should have an HIV test. Come to find out, she had some underlying, she had TB, like, you know, she had some underlying lung conditions that were being affected by HIV. Nobody knew until they finally tested her. So when she came to me, she had low T cells, less than 200, probably 1hamdred So this is somebody that had AIDS, had sex. She's a grandmother, but nobody talks to her because she's a grandmother.
Let's talk about the Black church. Let's talk about the Black church. Is the Black church embracing, educating the community about AIDS and HIV, using condom, preventions, and all that?